Welcome to Dive In with Matt and Joe.
We're here to continue the conversation that was started with our Sunday message here at Centerpoint Church. Sometimes we dig deeper into the biblical context. Other times we're telling some stories. We are excited that you're here to take this journey with us. I'm Matt.
And I'm Joe. Let's dive in. Well, welcome in, everybody. It is great to be here with you all, and I am so happy to be sitting across the table from Matt.
It is great to be here, to be back.
It's good to have you back, man.
Yeah, man, you and Tad killed it last week.
We had fun.
It was clear, and I had FOMO listening as I was driving down the road and
Tad did
listening.
a great job.
He absolutely did. So, way to go, Tad.
If you're listening, way to go.
Yeah, that was great.
That was great. It was great. And it's also great to have you back.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for being here. Well, this past Sunday, we're continuing our way through Exodus. We're in chapter 5, and we looked at the theme of things are getting worse here, and God has promised deliverance to his people, and yet the screws are being tightened here. This is not good.
Yeah, and Exodus wants us to feel that.
Ugh, yeah.
And I suspect we're not the first humans in human history that have been averse to suffering and pain. But we don't like sitting in those things.
Yeah, no. Mm-mm.
But chapter 5 kind of forces us to.
Yeah, it's pretty intense.
Yeah.
Pretty intense.
It could easily feel like flyby territory. And so we just like, yeah, man, and Pharaoh was so bad, he made them make bricks without providing their straw, and it was bad, and let's move on.
Called him lazy and killed him as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah. Quick flyby.
But Exodus wants us to read every word of it and to sit with it and to feel the, ugh.
Yeah, it's really uncomfortable and discontenting.
It is. And it was for Moses.
Big time.
Right? And so just even looking at how it ends.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
kind
if we
of his
look
last
at
words.
the last couple of verses here, I'd like to just read them real quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Moses returned to the Lord and said, "Why, Lord? Why have you brought trouble on this people? Is this why you sent me? Ever since I went to Pharaoh to speak in your name, he has brought trouble on this people, and you have not rescued your people at all."
At all. I love that last phrase.
and so consternation really turned into lament.
Mm-hmm.
And not a neat, tidy lament.
No.
This was an all-out, God, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You'd promised one thing. This is the opposite of that thing. What is going on?
Yeah, right. So we're not looking to recap the message. We're looking to go deeper into it. So if you've not listened to it, you can press pause here and check out the message. But let's just give a quick kind of 30-second overview, because here we are dropping in, and if our listeners are tuning in and haven't heard the message, they're going, wow, this sounds really intense. I'm not sure what we're talking about here.
Well, as we get into Exodus 5, we're sitting in this space where now Moses and Aaron go talk to Pharaoh directly, which there's whole kinds of there's a lot in that in itself and how they did that.
You brought some great observations
approach
in the message, yeah.
But then instead of Pharaoh going, "Oh yeah, you guys want to go out for a little bit and go worship Yahweh? That's great. If Yahweh says it, I'm good with that." Pharaoh just rises up and exerts his power, not just by refusing to let them go, but in that moment, and that's how Exodus writes it, like immediately, like in this moment, as a result of this conversation, let there be no questions about why Pharaoh is doing this. As a result of this conversation, Pharaoh decrees that straw was not to be provided for the making of bricks anymore.
And that's a big deal.
It is a very
We might
big
read
deal.
that and go, okay, so they didn't have straw.
Well, and so they still had to make bricks with straw. They just now had to go get their own. Mm-hmm. It would no longer be provided, and the quota hasn't changed. And so if you start your day with mud and a pile of straw that was provided for you, and you got to go about your business and you got to make 100 bricks that day, now you still have to make 100 bricks, but there's no pile of straw when you wake up.
You've got to go get it.
It means you've got to go get it. And so it's going to be more work, but no less. Like it, and what's being held out here is impossible. Mm-hmm. It is impossible to satisfy Pharaoh's decree. Mm-hmm. And so he is turning the screws to Israel. Mm-hmm. And they're crying out.
Yeah, this is getting ratcheted up.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of what's going on in this chapter. Here, Moses is arriving on the scene as supposed to be the rescuer.
Right, and it's getting worse.
And it took some convincing for Moses, and you covered this in your message and last week in the podcast with Tad, where, like, okay, it took some convincing even for Moses to be God's chosen rescuer. But here he goes, I'll do it. And they go in, and it's the exact opposite.
And the very first engagement here with Pharaoh goes really poorly.
Yeah.
Now, one thing you brought out, it was from chapter 3, God had already told Moses that it wasn't going to go well.
Well, that's right. And it was Moses' job to tell the Israelite elders, it's not going to go well.
Yeah, I'm looking here in chapter 3. Yeah, okay. So you're going to go, so you and the elders, so that's kind of key number 1 there. You brought that out beautifully in the message this past weekend, where in chapter 5, it's just Moses and Aaron. So they're already kind of fudging on what God had invited them to. He wanted the whole delegation with them, with the elders. And then this is what you'll say to him. This is chapter 3, verse 18. You'll say to Pharaoh this, Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, has met with us. So now, please let us go a 3 days' journey into the wilderness so that we might sacrifice to Yahweh our God. But I know that the king of Egypt will not permit you to go except under compulsion. So I will reach out my hand and strike Egypt with all my miracles, which I shall do in the midst of it. And after that, he will let you go.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's going to be a lot that's going to happen before they're let go, right? In just these few verses. And now we're back to chapter 5 in kind of real time as we're walking through this journey. And this is the first interaction, and it goes so poorly.
It goes very poorly. Okay, so what approach should we take next? Because I want us to. We've got an entrance of something a little bit serpenty going on in this. I don't want to take too long on that one, but but we see kind of the way of the serpent coming in. Mm-hmm. I want us to spend more time talking about Pharaoh. Not just Pharaoh of chapter 5, but broadly as well.
Yeah.
What do you want to do first?
Ooh, well, I think we talk about Pharaoh.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go there.
Okay.
Yeah, let's go there.
And so it is. What's fascinating is, at least I think it's fascinating, is this isn't all one Pharaoh. Every time it says Pharaoh, I think we're on number 4
at this point in Exodus.
At this point in Exodus. And so I mentioned this in the message. And again, I don't want to make more out of it than we're supposed to. Mm-hmm. But it's possible that this Pharaoh was raised in the same household as Moses.
It's a possibility.
Again, household's big. It wasn't like a 3-room, 2-bathroom, 1,800 square foot kind of a house. But so household means a lot of things. Mm-hmm. But how fascinating that two people raised under the authority and in the tutelage of Pharaoh's household. One grows up to be Pharaoh. The other grows up to be rescuer, deliverer. They go different ways. So, but it's also fascinating. Again, I think it is that we're not told all of that explicitly, right? So we're just kind of doing some math and checking in timelines and those kinds of things. Right. And so while being Pharaoh, we're not given a lot of specifics about him. And that's on purpose because Pharaoh is in the process of becoming a figurehead of that which lives on. So it's not just about what did this one person do.
Wow, gosh, they were really bad.
Yeah, but he becomes now a figurehead of pharaohs throughout human history that all operate in these same ways. Is that a fair way to
Yeah,
kind of understand that? How do you understand
yeah,
it?
so there's an analogy popping in my mind now. Let's see if this is helpful. So I'm hearing you talk about how Pharaoh here in Exodus, there's going to be things that are going to come downstream after this Pharaoh, where we're going to see these themes of Pharaoh-like rulers throughout the rest of Scripture.
Yeah.
That's downstream.
Yeah.
What we've also been talking about is, if we're using Pharaoh as our marker, upstream, before Pharaoh, there's a whole set of themes that's coming down the river that by the time we get to Pharaoh, they all converge.
And kind of become personified in this person.
Yeah, so
right?
so Pharaoh here in Exodus becomes like a composite sketch or a composite character. So I'm not saying that he wasn't real. I'm not saying that
historic
at all.
figure.
All I'm saying is he's a historic figure, but all of these meta themes from earlier in the story are converging here. So, for example, we've got the way of the serpent. We saw that in chapter 1 in particular, where he's crafty, he's shrewd, he's dealing in serpenty ways. We have it here in this chapter because in verse 2, I'm going to read from the NASB. Pharaoh responds to Moses in verse 2, "Who is Yahweh that I should obey his voice and let Israel go?" And do you remember what the serpent invited the man and the woman into in the garden?
To question what God said.
To question his voice.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, so we've got the serpent thread up here. We have seen that Pharaoh kills people. He killed in chapter 1 the Hebrew boys. So he is now taking Cain and he's walking in the way of Cain, but now it's mass produced, right?
Yes.
And then we have Genesis chapter 11 with the Tower of Babel, or the Tower of Babylon, where, do you remember what was used to construct that tower?
Bricks.
Bricks. Yep. It talks about bricks and mortar. And bricks and mortar are here in Exodus 1 and here in Exodus 5.
Which is what Israelites are being forced to produce.
There it is.
Right. And so here are God's people being forced to produce that which was produced to make the Tower of Babylon.
That's it. That's it. So that's what I mean by, if Pharaoh's our marker, upstream prior to him, these threads, Cain, serpent, Tower of Babylon, they're all converging here on this character in this person.
And that helps us to see it more clearly. So even when you look at the story of the tower, it's they said, let's make a name for ourselves. It's kind of this they. There's this sense of communal convergence.
It's united self-exaltation.
Yeah. And so now it comes down to one person. And so it's even a sharper point for us to see clearly what's going on.
Yeah, definitely so. Definitely so. So Pharaoh here is leading his empire. So think Tower of Babel, but on steroids now, right? This is the world's superpower of the day. So Egypt and Pharaoh, they're becoming the human face of the serpent's rebellion that started back in the garden.
Well, and even, a small little piece here, but Pharaoh is building these buildings to make his name great.
Exactly.
Right? That's what empire builders do.
Yeah, to exalt his own name.
His own name.
And the name of his people. Yep. Yeah. So this is it. All these things are converging here onto this character. But then what we see, to your point, is downstream. So from here through the end of the story, because even in Revelation, the last book of the Bible, we're seeing these themes just continue in each generation, where each generation is going to have its empires led by its pharaohs.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so empire becomes the force, the system, the way of existing that stands in opposition to the way of the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and what we come to know as the kingdom of God.
Yeah, that's it. So it's like the way of Cain gets institutionalized and becomes systemic.
Right.
In empire.
And so reiterate those themes for us that we see emerging downstream, and how might we see them personified?
Yeah, well, even the prophets like Ezekiel will address Pharaoh in particular.
Yeah.
Right. So Pharaoh becomes this embodied archetype that the prophets will look back on and then map Pharaoh onto leaders in their day.
Right.
Right. It's the same thing with Babylon. It's in Genesis 11 with the Tower of Babylon. That gets mapped onto, in the New Testament, that gets mapped onto the Roman Empire. So Babylon wasn't around then in the New Testament, but it gets mapped onto, so Peter talks about this in his letter, and then Revelation talks about this. Where
Nebuchadnezzar was a pharaoh, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So these themes, they get, in the ancient imagination, they get mapped onto future kings and future empires who, yeah, like there was still Egypt in the Old Testament and Babylon in the Old Testament, but eventually those embodied archetypes live past those actual empires and then get mapped onto later empires and kings.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
It makes perfect sense. And so we want to pay attention to what's emerging here in Exodus 5 because the refrain will come up again.
Yes, it will.
And part of the wisdom that Exodus is giving us is learning how to recognize these pieces. And which helps situate us even in our own day and in our own world.
Well, that's so important because that was going to be my question for you. You touched on this towards the end of the message, and I think it was a really important point. What does the way of Pharaoh and the way of empire, what does it do to human beings, image bearers?
Well, I think a summary is oppression, right? So it operates in systems. And sometimes in evangelical Christianity, we kind of chafe a little bit at the notion of systems, and that evil, wickedness, anti-godness lives and abides in systems, because our theological framework is very individualized. Now we're going to get there in just a second, but I do want us to not glance over too quickly the notion of systems, because systems are just how individuals operate in the world together. And so people are the ones who are bringing systems in this and are part of animating Pharaoh, if you will, the systems of oppression that are captured in Pharaoh and those who kind of bear his mark on down the road. And so it's a dehumanization. It's a grasping at power at all costs. It's manipulation and control. So we see that. I didn't draw this much out in the message, but we get a taste of this in Exodus 5, where there are the slave drivers, which are Egyptian, kind of overseeing the Israelites. But then there are overseers who are Israelite. They're Hebrew.
Yeah, the foremen.
They're of the oppressed people, probably given some measure of privilege, but they've got to get work out of their Hebrew brothers, in the field. So we see that happen, and that's part of the way that systems work, to divide, to control, to manipulate. All of it is about power and making one's name great, and the name that is not God.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so we see these themes emerge, and they live in systems. So they different systems, you think about it, would be government, would be one of the big ones that we see this, the exertion of power through government. And it can take all kinds of shapes. It can take all kinds of shapes. Let's not just assume that it's only one kind of government this happens in. Because empire does what empire does, no matter the shape of the empire. And we need to be wary of these things, because empire is always in opposition to God's kingdom. Because the ways of the kingdom are not the ways of empire, and vice versa. And they don't abide together. And that's even what we see here in Pharaoh. When Pharaoh says Yahweh, who is Yahweh?
Go pound sand.
Right. He's not curious about who is Yahweh, tell me more. He is dismissing Yahweh as anything of authority.
Well, right, because he's the ultimate authority in the land.
That's exactly right.
I don't care who Yahweh is of this group of people who I've enslaved.
That's exactly right. And so we even see, later on, Moses is saying, Yahweh says, the Lord says, and then gives his words. And later on down, I think it's the overseers. Yeah, the slave driver, verse 10, the slave drivers and the overseers. So it's not just the Egyptians, but the Israelite overseers went out and they said to the people, this is what Pharaoh says.
Yep.
And
Because who's the god of the land?
Because Pharaoh is the god of the land.
Yeah. He's part of the pantheon of the gods.
He is not okay with somebody trying to exert power and influence. And let's be honest, Yahweh isn't okay sharing power and influence.
No, he's not.
And we're going to see that very clearly coming on down the road. And so right at the top of the list is Yahweh saying, oh, there is only one.
Yeah.
Right. So God does not share power and authority. Pharaoh does not share power and authority. Empire does not share power and authority.
Right. So this
demands allegiance.
Yeah. So this is setting us up for a massive confrontation.
It absolutely is. We see this in systems of economy. And while I have certain preferences of how an economy works, the dollar is the king. And that's why Jesus will even talk about mammon, giving it sort of this godlike spiritual way.
Yep. Money and possessions.
Yeah. Can hold us fast. And you even think about what that does to humanity. It demands allegiance. It dehumanizes people, turns them into purchasers and producers of some form or another. And human life is valued in terms of what it produces for the economy.
Yep.
And we even have those conversations, frankly, around in the whole abortion conversation. One of the pieces that comes up into those things is cost. And can a person produce? And why would we give up production in order to this? And so you talk about something that is about the tenderness of life, but it's framed oftentimes, not the only way, but oftentimes in economic terms. And so we see how economic systems can go the way of Pharaoh, which is animating the serpent. And so we must be wary of these things.
Yeah, animated by the serpent.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. That's good, Joe.
Yeah, right. And then probably even another concentric circle layer out would be then the effect that those things have on all of creation. Because as humanity goes, so goes creation because of the mandate in the garden, which was for humanity to partner with God, dwell with him, and join him in ruling over the world.
So well said. So well said.
Right. So this is all that we're talking about then becomes just this big meta reflection on this is what happens when humanity goes the way of seeing and taking and defining what is good and bad on their own terms.
Well, and I just want to name one more system in this. It's the system of religion.
Sneaky. Yes.
Yeah. Just kind of reading in my own time this morning. From John chapter 8.
Yeah.
I'm not going to read the whole thing.
Oh, okay.
But Jesus is going into this confrontation with the religious leaders who are the ones who are upholding this religious system. We've talked about it before as the kind of the temple cult, kind of a thing on how the whole system works oriented around the temple and preserving tradition, system, which has embraced the way of Satan. And Jesus says as much.
So it's just a different way of putting heavy burdens on the people.
Jesus says as much.
Oh, let's hear it.
So verse 42, I think this is kind of where we'll...
Okay.
Jesus said to them, if God were your father, you would love me, for I have come here from God. I have not come on my own. God sent me. So we're even, there's Exodus stuff written in there. Why is my language not clear to you? Because you are unable to hear what I say. You belong to your father, the devil, and you want to carry out your father's desires.
Those are fighting words.
Oh, yeah.
It's like when he calls them brood of vipers, right?
Yeah.
You're sons of Satan.
It says he was a murderer from the beginning, not holding to the truth, for there is no truth in him. When he lies, he speaks his native language, for he is a liar and the father of lies. But because I tell the truth, you do not believe me.
Okay.
So that's an example of Jesus's confrontation, because Jesus is, if you will, the new Moses, leading confrontation against the systems that are decreation, but also stand in opposition to the kingdom of God, God's effective will and rule. And it shows up in a variety of systems, government, economy, and Jesus talks about those things. Jesus talks about the economy, and Jesus talks about religion.
You had me thinking back to Exodus 5.
Okay.
Because one of the things that Pharaoh's going to harp on here, verse 9, make the work harder for the people so that they keep working and pay no attention to lies.
Yeah.
Don't pay attention to those lies.
Which is interesting. What lies is he talking about? Like we're not told
Well,
explicitly.
we're not told explicitly, but what we could infer, because one of the themes that's going to run through chapter 5 here is that he keeps coming back to the people are lazy, the people are lazy, the people are lazy.
Yeah.
And it has to do with in verse 1 when Moses said, let this is what God is saying to you, Pharaoh, let my people go so that they might celebrate a feast to me in the wilderness. So that the word feast there, this isn't just like, oh, they're going to go have some food. What he's talking about is it's a feast to go and worship, to commune with, and to be with God, to reflect on who he is and what he's done and what he's doing, to rest, to breathe.
But it's not passive
to be.
By any means.
No, and it's not passive because this word here used of feast is from the same root word that's used of the other festivals then, once they're brought out of Egypt and they're given annual festivals to keep. It gets really interesting because earlier in chapter 3, when God was talking to Moses, he said, I'm going to bring my people out so that they might worship me at Sinai. Chapter 4, tell Pharaoh to let my firstborn son go that he might worship me. Those words for worship get translated into English as worship and as work.
It's the same Hebrew word. Again, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but abad.
Yeah.
Gets translated both of those ways.
And guess where we find its origin? You're going to be shocked. We find its origin in the garden. So chapter 2, verse 5.
Which is the commission.
There was no man to cultivate the ground. That word is
abad?
Our word here.
Okay.
And then 2:15, a little bit later, then Yahweh, God, took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to
work it
and tend to it.
Yeah.
So there's our word, work and worship, coming from the same Hebrew word.
So Pharaoh is forcing labor of the Israelites, God's people, for his own end to make Pharaoh's name great. Yahweh, through Moses, is communicating, let my people come out to abad me in the wilderness, which is tied to their created commission in Genesis to be a people that tends to creation. And so here God is inviting them into the wilderness, not into an Eden. The Eden is the promise yet to come, land flowing with milk and honey, but I'm going to meet with them in the wilderness. They will abad me there, translated worship, serve. And so the Lord, Yahweh, is not, there's a couple things going on as I'm seeing it. Speak into this, as you might see it differently, but there's this confrontation of who are the people going to abad, who are the people going to serve/worship.
100%, because there's this word that runs through chapter 5 that gets in the NIV gets translated as labor or work. It's not abad. We only get abad one place here in chapter 5, and it's in verse 18, where Pharaoh's kind of reached his last straw, pun intended. And,
well played.
And he says, now get to work. You will not be given any straw. You must produce your full quota of bricks. There's our word, abad.
Yeah.
You must get to abad. So it is completely inverting the service, work, worship, all in that word abad in Genesis 2 that all of humanity was invited into, and it's utterly inverting it, pulling it inside and out. And here, Pharaoh is saying, no, your worship, your service, your work is to me and to my kingdom.
Yes.
That's your worship.
And Yahweh's rescue says, no, your worship, your work is to me.
Which is so key, because Yahweh's not just freeing his people. He's not just freeing them from slavery and oppression. He's freeing them for worship, service, and work to him.
And the description of what that looks like is, yes, festival, right? So there's celebrate, like you did a beautiful job talking about that. It's festival, there's celebration, there's honor.
Communing.
There's community, there's rest, there's fullness, right? Flourishing. Festival looks like flourishing.
Yeah. And it doesn't look like being ground into the ground of production.
So some of this is just because this is what I'm coming off of, but Heidi and I got to celebrate a dear friend's son's, we love his son too, but wedding. And so that's where we were last week. And so we're at the reception, and there's music and there's dancing, and the food was served family style, which means like you were sitting around the table with people, and it comes with just plates, and you share, and there's more. And the lady who was serving our table just said, "Do you want any more? Can I bring any more?" And it's fullness, it's flourishing. We got to be with people that some of them we haven't been with in 20 years. And so there's joy and connection. Like that's this picture of what the Lord is inviting his people into.
That's a beautiful
meet
picture.
with him.
Yeah.
And so we feel it in the deepest sense of who we are, of flourishing, richness, fullness. And all of that is tied to what he made humanity for, like you were talking about in Genesis 2, to do that with him.
With him.
For the good of all creation.
And remember, humanity is made at the end of day 6, and so their first full day that they experienced life with him was day 7.
Yes.
And day 7 was made holy, and day 7 was set apart as Sabbath rest, the day that God settled into his creation. And he said, "Oh, come dwell with me." We're not going to do any work just yet. We're actually going to start from this place of dwelling, communing, and rest.
Yeah.
And then out of this space that we celebrate once every week, that's where you do your worship and your work.
Yeah.
It flows out of this. And Pharaoh takes that and says, "I have no time. There is no space. All this is about is production.
Get back to work."
You are what you do."
Yeah. And this is a community that for 400 years that had become their identity, because oppression shapes an identity. Mm-hmm. It not only demands labor, but it demands they understand something of themselves. And so we hear Pharaoh berate them as, "You're just lazy. You're only as good as what you produce," etc. And that's an identity that gets taken on. And so we experience, we can see this in systems in our world. And so when the rescuer comes, the rescuer upends these systems because he's calling out of. And so Jesus himself confronts systems of government, systems of economy, systems of religion, even systems of morality that aren't based on the law of love. And he draws people to himself, to something other. He says, "Come to me, you who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." He meets thousands of people on a hillside. It says, "You're hungry? Let me feed you." So much that there's going to be leftovers, right? So he is inviting humanity, inviting us into. And I love how you said that, Joe. He's not just rescuing from, he's rescuing us for something. And if we're going to understand the salvation of God that continues in our day, we've got to understand that. He is rescuing us from, and he is rescuing us for a new way of living, which is when Jesus announces the kingdom of heaven is at hand. Repent and believe this good news. Is this call into this thing that he is rescuing us for, which is life with him.
That's it, because that's our vocation from the beginning. Dwell with me, walk with me, join me and partner with me in seeing my glory cover the whole earth. What does that mean? to take Eden into the whole world. And you were riffing on Matthew 11 there, where Jesus says, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and burdened." That's interesting, because here in Exodus 5, the labor, the burdens that Pharaoh is putting on his people.
Yep.
And then John 8 that you brought out for us, the religious leaders in Jesus' day are putting these burdens, these heavy burdens, and Jesus is saying, "Come to me." I know most of you are experiencing this. You're tired, you're worn out, you're burnt out on religion.
Yeah.
You're burdened down. I'll give you rest. But it's interesting. He goes on, "Take my yoke upon you and learn from me." And he seldom describes himself, but here's what he has to say. "For I'm gentle, I'm humble in heart, and you'll find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy," or "my yoke is comfortable, and my burden is light." A yoke was used on animals for tilling the field, for work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he's not saying,
Grab a hammock.
yeah, no. No, he's saying, yeah, come on. I'll come to me.
Work
and give
with
you
me.
rest. Yeah, find your rest in me, and then we're going to work together. I'm going to be with you in this. So not just saved from, but also saved for. Rescued from and rescued for this life with him, inviting us to participate in the very life of God.
And that isn't contained in one spot. So what I mean is like, that's not just for when we gather at the church. This is like wherever you're listening to us now. Maybe you're walking through your neighborhood, driving to or from your work. You just drop the kids off somewhere, kind of wherever that is. That's actually a part of your calling, a part of your vocation. And so we work hard, not because the taskmaster of economy demands it of us. We work hard because we have been freed by a deliverer to give ourselves to worshiping, working with him. And there's freedom in this. Now, this is life outside of Eden. So there's thorns and thistles in our work.
And there are pharaohs.
And there are pharaohs.
And there are empires
in the land. But we do this as people who are freed. And it can, in that there is peace, in that there is life, thriving, flourishing, goodness, kind of whatever shape that takes. You know, you might be wrestling with this in your retirement. I don't have somebody demanding something of me. My schedule isn't full, or it's full, but I'm not sure how it all fits together. And you can wrestle through this. Do I matter? When people step into retirement, that's often a conversation that they want to wrestle with is, do I matter anymore? I knew why I mattered when I was working. Do I matter now that I'm retired? And the invitation of Jesus is, oh, absolutely. Because there is work, worship, service in the kingdom, wherever our paycheck comes from or doesn't, that he calls us into, and there's life and life to the full.
Well, and I think about, you just took some time off last week.
Yeah.
I took some time off earlier in the summer. That's really hard for me. It's really hard for me. I still have Egypt in me.
Yeah.
And there's a variety of reasons for that. But I'm having to learn in a very full stage of life that part of me working well with the Lord and worshiping him well with my life is embracing my creaturely limitations. Taking time off to rest, taking time off to be with friends and family, embracing the fact I need sleep. I need at least X number of hours of sleep. And if I keep shaving things off, it's not going to go good for my health.
Yeah.
How can I be present for my family, right? So I think that's another invitation here, is embracing our limitations in ways that we can. And perhaps there's some listeners who maybe you are self-employed, or maybe you are in a position of leadership, or maybe you actually run a company and you have a team. What might that look like for you in your position to ensure first that you're modeling it well yourself, to embrace your limits, to take time off, to entrust things to other people, because the world's going to keep turning, as well as care for your coworkers, care for your employees, care for those that you oversee, what might that look like for you to help them embrace their limits as well? Because at the end of the day, we're image bearers of Yahweh, and we've been invited to work and worship with him out of a place of rest in him.